Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is another show live from Athens, and I am Christos Archos. We are going to talk today about two important matters. We are going to talk about, of course, about the week ahead, and then we are going to talk about declinations and their importance in understanding the reality of a person. I think that a declination is a very important way of seeing things, because we usually look at the longitude aspects, but as we know, even declination aspect is very important. So by looking this declination aspect, we are going to learn more about how things are working in our natal charts, what the parallels and the contra parallels are working and how they work. But also we are going to speak about more important matters, like for example how these aspects and how these parallels and contra parallels are going to help us understand better our own natal chart, which is I think is the most important. But let's start first and speak about what is going to happen in this week, because this week is really very important, and I think a lot of people are going to feel that they have the power and the energy to change and transform their lives. I think this is very important. But let's start and let's first talk about the first and the most important aspects of this period, and then we are going to talk about the rest. So let me one time, okay, and so one great aspect is that of Mars having a square with Neptune. Mars having a square with Neptune is a not easy situation, because usually is an aspect that may create some severe problems in our defense of our body. So we may feel ill, or we may feel that we do not have a lot of energy, or that we cannot deal with everyday things and our reality. Mars has to do with action. Neptune has to do with understanding in a very different way our reality. So this Mars having a square with Neptune usually means that we are acting in the wrong way. But on the other hand, of course, this is always an aspect of charisma, an aspect of showing our abilities and dealing with things and become even better, and perhaps feeling that we are secure. Of course, people that they have planets in the mutable signs around the 15th, 16th and the 70th degree of these mutable signs are going to be really affected, because this square has to do with complex situations and sometimes with competitive actions that may lead to severe problems. But also sometimes we may feel a physical weakness and a lack of energy. And I think the biggest problem with Mars having a square with Neptune is that we are not sure about which action is the best of doing things. So this is something we really need to take care. But also, we already know that there is a problem with the flu, and there are some regions in the planet that they are under some kind of turbulence because of viruses. I think that this square between Mars and Neptune has to do with all that things, and this Neptunian energy is going to affect a lot the next days. On the other hand, this is a very spiritual aspect. In a psychological level, you can use it in order to take from your life people that they are not worthy of you, and also you can really change your everyday life or your habits. And then we have this semi-square between Venus and Uranus on the 28th of January 2020. I think this is an aspect that is going to affect a lot the second decade of Pisces, 16, 17 and 18 degree of mutable signs, and of course first, second and third degree of the fixed signs. And this semi-square between Venus and Uranus has to do with obstacles in social circumstances. It has to do with being rebellious and also being unstable, and sometimes we may have a behavior that is not very easy to control, and so we may have some problems in our everyday life. But on the other hand, I think that this is a great aspect in order to heal what really happens within our lives, but also to forgive other people and have some social excitement, perhaps meeting a new person, feeling happy, being in control of your life, and change things that you are fed up and you don't want them anymore. I think this is a great aspect if you want really to change, but this is not a great aspect if you want to have a conversation and deal with your everyday problems with your romantic relationship or dealing with financial matters, because this Venus semi-square Uranus may bring problems in financial matters. And then we have Mercury forming a sesquisquare with North Node, and this is an aspect that is going to create problems of communication within groups and between groups. So when I'm seeing groups not having a decent conversation, we may have problem with racism, we may have problem in understanding others and giving equal opportunities within a society. So this is a very difficult aspect that is going to affect a lot Aquarians in the third decade, 20, 21 and 22, but also 5, 6 and 7 degree of Cancer. And then we have this Mars forming a sesquisquare with Uranus. This is of course a very aggressive aspect. This is an aspect of obstacles. This is an aspect about restraints, about having problems and not finding solutions. There is a strong stressful situation that may bring some impulsive actions, and of course we may have some accidental situations that they are not going to be really easy. It is going to affect, of course, the second decade of Sagittarius, 16th, 17th and 18th degree, and of course the first decade of Taurus in the first, second and the third degree. And we should expect a lot of anger, a lot of problems in dealing with everyday situations, and I think this is not a very easy aspect. This is an aspect that is going to bring conflict, and also on the mundane level we may have people that they may be negative towards others, and this is not an easy aspect at all. This is about having problems or not dealing with situations in a peaceful manner, and this is going to bring a lot of conflict. But on the other hand, we have another aspect, a dual aspect, I could say. We have Mercury forming a semi-sextile with Pluto and Saturn on the 3rd and 31st January 2020. I think this is a very helpful situation, because those semi-sextiles of Mercury is going to help a lot, especially people on the third decade of Aquarius and also of Capricorn, to deal with their situation, with their emotions, but also find finally the truth. Because as you already know, we had a conjunction with Saturn and Pluto in the beginning of this month, and I think that this Mercury forming a semi-sextile is going to bring logic and analytical mind in order to bring something new and something constructive in our life, and I think this is really important. And then we have a great aspect on the 2nd of February 2020, and I think this is a great aspect. Venus is forming a sextile with Pluto, and it is going to affect the 3rd decanate of Pisces, Virgo, and the 3rd decanate of Capricorn and Cancer from the 21st to 25th degree of those signs. I think that this Venus forming a sextile with Pluto has to do with dealing with your money, but also finding something new, sharing your love and your passion, and having your needs being secured, but also fulfilling those needs with love and great emotions. And this is always an aspect that is going to bring perhaps a new affair with someone, something I think that could be great if you're really into finding someone new in your life, forming a new relationship with someone. And of course, this Venus sextile Pluto is always good on many matters. So if you have your 2nd and 8th house being affected in those degrees, you are going to feel that you are having a helpful hand behind your back, and you are going to feel that everything works better. And then we have this Venus forming a sextile with Saturn on the 4th of February 2020. I think this is a great aspect also because it's going to bring a lot of order in our life, and perhaps some people may finally find peace in their financial matters. And I think this is always an aspect in forming a new and serious relationship. It is always a very good aspect in business opportunities, being diplomatic, and sometimes perhaps finding your stability, and being, of course, having a good judgment in financial matters. And I think this is something that is going to bring a lot of happiness and a sense of being complete in our life. And then we have, of course, at the end of the 4th of February 2020, a quintile between Venus and Jupiter that's going to affect a lot, again, the 3rd decanate of Pisces. I strongly believe that those aspects are very, very good, because we are going to feel that we are communicating with others, and we are going to feel secure, and that we have finally the ability to change what happens in our life and perhaps transform what really happens to our everyday situations, and finding what really happens in our reality and change it. And of course, we have also some important informations for the next 8 days, and this is where I want to talk about the parallels and the contra-parallels, which I think is really important, and it is a matter that sometimes perhaps astrologers do not really look upon it. For example, on the 28th of January 2020, we have Venus having a parallel with Neptune. Even if you don't have in your natal chart an aspect like Venus forming a square or having a trine with Neptune, you're probably going to say that you do not feel this kind of energy. But if you look closer in your natal chart, perhaps you have a parallel of Venus and Neptune, and this parallel may bring this romanticism, this artful situation in your life, your inner dimension craving for spirituality, and also to connect with someone in a very spiritual or an absolute way. So forming and having parallels and contra-parallels is not just that you add something extra that is not very helpful. I completely disagree with that point of view, because parallels and contra-parallels in fact tell us the other point, the other half of the situation, how it works. Because looking only on longitudinal aspects brings us a one dimension of understanding of what is that human being. But we know that we are not just one dimension, and we should look closer on these parallels of declination, but also parallels of latitude, which I think both parallels and contra-parallels, they are going to help us a lot in understanding how we really communicate with others, but also how we can really understand our natal chart. I found people, for example, that they felt this Plutonian energy, but there was not any important Plutonian aspect in their natal chart. But what happened? They had a serious parallel or a contra-parallel that that was giving a lot of Plutonian energy. For example, my Neptune is strong because my Sun is forming a contra-parallel with him, and also I have an opposition and a contra-parallel with Uranus. And this is another point that I would like to mention, that when we're having planets that they are having parallels and conjunctions at the same time, or contra-parallels and oppositions, these are very important aspects that we should look at them, not just in predicting things, but also understanding natal chart and also having an astropsychological profile. So in the 28th of January 2020, we have this Venus forming a parallel with Neptune, which is a great aspect. It was going to bring a lot of romanticism, a lot of new ideas, and a sense of belonging, something really great. And also on the 28th of January 2020, as I said, we have this Mars forming a square with Neptune. So this is another point of view that is going to bring us a lot of information about things that we were unaware. Both sexual planets, Mars and Venus, form some kind of aspect with Neptune. This brings a much more concrete and direct message about the importance of the Neptunian idealism and perhaps deceit of what is going to happen to this week. And also, if we look closer, on the 28th of January 2020, we have Mars having a parallel with Jupiter. This is a parallel of the fighter, of the person that he is willing to fight till his death to find his purpose and change the universe. And then we have other kind of parallels that are very important. For example, we have the contra-parallel on the 1st of February 2020 between Venus and Chiron. This contra-parallel is going to bring some kind of emotional wounds that we need to cure and get over. And we have to look also at the sequence of these planets and these aspects. First, we have the Venus having a contra-parallel with Chiron, and then we have Venus forming a sextile with Pluto. That means that we have to deal with our wounds and then transform and then change our life. If the sequence was different, the message will be completely also different. If you had first the Venus forming a sextile with Pluto, would mean a very stressful situation in your emotional, financial matters that is going to bring a wound and a problematic situation, because the contra-parallel of Venus and Chiron will be at the end of the sequence of the aspects the Venus is forming, which is, of course, really important. We just look sometimes the aspects as being isolated islands. This is not true. Everything is a cycle. You have to look that this is a cycle and you go from this place to that place and there is a complete transformation of the message. You cannot ignore what was before and what is after. That is also very important. Your natal chart. For example, you are having a trine between Moon and Neptune, okay? This trine is very important, but you have to look what was happening before and what is going to happen afterwards. This Moon, what kind of aspect was forming before and what aspect forms afterwards? Because we are just a moment, a photograph in an everlasting and moving universe. And if you really want to understand what happens to this photograph, you need to understand the previous and the afterwards movements, which is the most important thing that everything is a cycle in astrology. We are having cycles within cycles within cycles, and we have eternal cycles that they never end. And those cycles are giving us the real message. For example, when you're having a square between two planets, you have to look even the conjunction of these two planets, because every formation of an aspect is something like that, is like a power that is having a formation and a meaning and a way of this aspect of learning itself. If you have, for example, a Mars-Saturn conjunction in the past, and right now you are having this Mars square your Saturn, and you are born with Mars-Saturn square, you closely have to look what happens before, but not just the previous aspect of Mars, but also the beginning of the cycle of this Mars-Saturn situation that you are having. So this is about this period at the beginning of February 2020 is about transforming your world and changing what really happens to your life. And then we have at the end of this week this contra-parallel between Mercury and Uranus on the 3rd of February 2020, which has to do with genius, has to do with transformation of your mind, having great ideas that is going to bring a lot of solutions in your everyday life. And I think this is always about understanding that you have to work hard, and although this hard work happens, there is always this moment, this eureka that is going to change your life. And this contra-parallel between Mercury and Uranus is going to help people find solutions that they were not expected. So, especially in astropsychology, because I'm a professional astropsychologist, I strongly believe that not including your parallels and contra-parallels in the natal chart, I think it is not very helpful. Because the parallels and contra-parallels are going to help you understand what really happens in your life and how all these things really communicate. And of course you are going to understand which conjunctions and oppositions are the most important. What I'm talking about? We all have conjunctions and oppositions, at least the most of us, we have conjunctions and oppositions in our natal charts. But not all conjunctions are the same, and not all oppositions are also very important. We have to look if there is an eclipse, a parallel eclipse. For example, if I have a conjunction and a parallel, this is like an eclipse. And if I have an opposition and a contra-parallel, it is another eclipse. So if you have eclipses in our natal chart, those conjunctions and oppositions are by far more important than the others. And then we can have double eclipses, triple eclipses, and etc. Meaning that we have at the same time a lot of planets forming conjunctions and parallels, or having oppositions and contra-parallels, which is very hard, and we have to look at really closely. But parallels of declination also, you can use them with midpoints. Of course, you do not have to look about every midpoint. You can just look the midpoints of Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and perhaps your ascendant and your midheaven. And also what is very important is that you have to look another point. This another point has to do with not just the midpoints of these parallels of declination, but also planets being in very specific and important positions. For example, the 0 north or south, the 12th and the 11th degree of north and south, and finally the 23rd degree and something north and south. Because each of these positions are very important. Planets on zero declination in zero declination are very powerful. They're usually very close to zero Aries and zero Libra, and that means that they have a lot of power because they are in connection with the Aries point. Planets on the 11th and the 12th degree are very stable planets. I talk about north and south declination, and okay, I'm not speaking about degrees of the zodiac. So if you have planets in the 11th and the 12th degree, or north or south, this is also very important. Those planets are very stable, they're very powerful, they cannot change their meaning. Usually those planets belong to the fixed signs. And then we have the planets being on the 23rd and something. Of course, there are already books about declinations in English. There is already the known term about high dec and X-dec, mean high dec, high declination, and X-dec, extreme declination, or out of bounds. So, but even if a planet is in the 21st, 22nd, or even 20 degree north or south, it is going to show some extreme qualities in his behavior. And if he goes out of bounds, this is going to be really hard and is going to be an extreme, a rogue. In a Greek article that I wrote before 8 years, I've said that I believe that those planets act like in a Luciferian way. And I'm not a Satanist, okay? I don't believe in that things. Just, I'm using the word Luciferian in order to bring to my students and the people that they listen to me that the planet is really getting opposed to what is lawful and what is the order of the solar system. Don't forget that usually the planets that they do not cross these borders is the Sun that forms the borders, Saturn, which is the ruler of the borders and everything that is inhibited, and Neptune. All of the other planets, sometime in the life, they are going to turn out of bounds. Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, are mostly in the most of the times around Cancer, Gemini, Sagittarius and Capricorn. Usually around there they may go out of bounds. And of course Jupiter and Uranus and Pluto sometimes may go out of bounds, although Pluto is not going out of bounds around 0 degree of Cancer and 0 degree of Capricorn, but he is usually out of bounds around 15 degree of Leo, 15 degree of Aquarius. And this is very important because in this transit of Pluto in Aquarius, he is not going to go out of bounds, which is very important. Unfortunately, when he was in Leo, he was going out of bounds and he was an extreme. But that's very good because the Plutonian transit in Aquarius is not going to bring any out of bound transit. So I strongly believe that planets that they are out of bounds act like the Lucifer tale. A planet that is doing what he really wants without listening the ultimate power, which is the sun, of course, in this particular situation as we talk about astrology. And these planets usually act in extremes, and their archetypes also act in extremes. And I've said about the butterfly of disorders. If you look in the most of the disorders, there is a formation of a butterfly having her wings wide open. That happens because usually the planets around out of bound limits, they are having an extreme expression, and this may bring problems in the psychology of a person. But on the other hand, this is also a gift because it is the region in your life and in your soul that is going to be extreme and very special, and you can differentiate from the mass. A planet being out of bounds or even headache around 2023 may be the planet that it is very, very powerful and very expressive. On the other hand, planets around the signs that they go out of bounds, Geminis, Cancers, Sagittarians and Capricorns, usually are people that they have extreme lives. Sometimes some planets may have an out-of-bounds situation at the end of Taurus or at the beginning of Leo, and also at the end of Scorpio and at the beginning of Aquarius. But the word of declinations is a powerful tool that we can really use in order to understand what really happens in our natal chart. And we can really get in the heart of a situation and finally understanding even our really adiscions or contradiscions. Because unfortunately, most of astrologers use a false adistion and contradistion formula. You need first to form a longitude equivalent declination technique and then look at your proper adischia and contradischia. I'm sorry about the names. They are Greek and I cannot imitate how you call them in English because they are Greek names. It is adischia and contradischia, and it's very difficult for my brain right now to imitate the English accent and how you call them. And also, don't forget that we have also parallels of latitude. While the parallels of declination are very important in giving us meaning, the parallels of latitude are very important because it's going to help us to understand if a planet is powerful enough to act. If a planet is closely to the orbit of the Sun, of the ecliptic, that means that this planet is very powerful and acts in a very, very powerful way. If it has a good or a bad meaning, a planet that is close to zero in parallels of latitude, he is very strong and is going to change the route of your life. So you have to look closer in what really happens in your life, because when you're looking at your parallels of latitude, you are going to understand which planets are closer to the ecliptic, to the orbit of the Sun. In fact, it's the orbit of the Earth, but in Earth-centered-like system as of that of astrology, the Sun is the one that moves. So you really have to look closer what really happens in the parallels of latitude. I think that parallels of latitude and parallels of declination, they can really show you a new and really important word of dealing with your natal chart. Do not try and fall to the trap of looking just one dimension, because one dimension always gives a problematic understanding of a situation. I've started looking at declinations and parallels of latitude since 2005. I'm looking at them for about 15 years, and I never regretted looking at them because it is a treasure. And it's going to give you a lot of information about what really happens in your life. This was, my dear friends, another Astrological Voyages show with me, Christos Archos, live from Athens, Greece. Right now it is 1:30 a.m. and I'm really very happy that you were with me in this show for once more. We are going to be together next Monday with the predictions of the week and of course of February, but also don't forget we are going to speak about astropsychology and the important aspects of the disorders that they are giving us the most of the pain in the world. We're going to talk about depression, bipolar disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and other important astropsychological informations that I think that it's going to be really useful to you. Thank you very much for your time. I hope in whatever place you're living on earth to have really fun and be okay. Thank you very much for your time. And if you want, you can like and you can share. And again, thank you very much for all of this happy company that you keep with me. Bye bye.